Do you ever wish someone would draw you a map and give you the directions to the career of your dreams? If so, consider this podcast your GPS to a career where you feel strong, fulfilled, and passionate about your work, day in and day out. On this show, I am sharing the tools to help you advocate for your strengths, discover your passions, and learn from folks who transformed their careers for the better. My name is Joyel Crawford, your fairy god mentor, and with my 18 years of experience in HR at a Fortune 50 company and 20 years of coaching and mentoring top leaders, I am thrilled to be your guide on this career journey. Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Career View Mirror, where we take a closer look at inspiring journeys of leaders who are redefining success in the workplace. I'm your host, Joyel Crawford, award-winning career coach, speaker, and your favorite fairy god mentor. Today, we're diving into one of the most pressing topics facing organizations today: employee retention and fulfillment. My guest, Nate Dinet, is the founder of the Step Manager, a leadership development company that helps managers build stronger, more connected, and more fulfilled teams. Nate is passionate about helping leaders move from managing tasks to leading people. My kind of guy. And his work has transformed how companies think about employee engagement and retention. Nate, welcome to Career View Mirror.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited for you to be here too. Let's start with your journey. What experience inspired you to create the Step Manager and dedicate your career to helping leaders retain and fulfill their teams?
Yeah, it actually started as a consulting engagement. I was a part of a team working for our client, who was a really big bank back in the early 2010s. And that was during a time period in the tech industry when organizations had a hell of a time retaining talent. And if you were anybody that knew anything about coding or technology, it was an employees market, meaning you could go into a job 2 weeks later, get a competing offer, and make like the 40% more salary, which is not even close to what it is now, but that's what it was. And organization. So we were brought in as a part of a team to come in and study and analyze what it was like, or what were the reasons why attrition was happening, or what was happening on the ground between the line manager and the individual contributor. And we did, it was a 6-month study, 6 months research internally, and we found a boatload of information around the dynamics in the internal organization and what was really happening versus what was, what the organization wanted to have happen, related to their culture, related to some of their specific policies. And there was a pretty big delta. There was a pretty big disconnect. And moreover, I saw in the interactions time and time again, the individual contributor just, I don't know, sort of getting kind of shunted around and ignored, or they weren't being actively managed. It was more so just an after effect. So we ended up delivering the results to the firm that had hired us, and they gave us an attaboy. They said, "Hey, this is great. Thank you so much for this, but we want you to make a culture deck for us instead." So at that point, yeah, that was classic. It was great. Yeah, they really liked it. It was like one of the key stakeholders was in love with it, but ultimately they just wanted like a culture deck, but the engagement didn't die there. It stuck with me, and I actually took what I had learned from that, and I created the Step Manager online. That was, back in I think it took like a year or so to kind of go on to my next engagement. And then I came back to it because I was like, man, this is such good information. And I created the Step Manager in like early 2016, and published my first online course. And was on Udemy when Udemy was new.
When it was hot.
and since then I've had I haven't checked recently, but I think I'm at like almost 60,000 students worldwide who have gone through and taken the course. And I knew that I wanted to do it because I know that, I worked in corporate, where I still, in some degrees or with clients or whatever, I still am connected to it. And I know that it's really challenging when you don't know what you can do to progress or be seen or be heard or get the right level of investment from the people around you. And it sucks. And sometimes you don't get what you deserve. And I want to help people with that. So that's why I built the Step Manager, because I legitimately want to see people succeed. And I legitimately want people to have the most fulfilling career that they can possibly get.
Ah, right on, Nate. Like, we are simpatico, because
Yes.
I love helping, leaders and employees, make sure that they're self advocating. And
Yep.
so I am sure that to be seen and heard is such a big thing with keeping employees engaged and
Totally.
retained.
Totally.
So when you're not speaking or training leaders, what does a typical day look like for you as the step
Yeah.
manager?
I spend a lot of time, or my favorite activity is to talk to my clients. I have a series
Mhm.
of one-on-one clients where I talk to them and I speak to them about their own career journey. I talk to them about their the campaigns that they're running internally, because that's how I look at it. Is you have to
Mhm.
kind of treat yourself as if you're running a campaign,
I say
for
that too. I say
your
that
brand,
too.
for your identity. And I spend a lot of time working with them and understanding the context, because every organization is very unique. Every
Yeah.
organization has its own culture. Everyone has their own way of wanting to be presented internally. Everyone has their own aspirations on how they want to grow. So it's very fulfilling to me to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of what does fulfillment mean, and what does the next step, and how do we progress as leaders. So there's a good boundary pushing that happens with those discussions that I have with clients. So a lot of the times, or a lot of my days, I spend talking about that with them. And then this time of year, I'm focused on collecting a lot of information, because usually at the beginning of the year, I like to publish either a report or a series of reports around what I have found in my internal network related to the state of the role, the state of pay structure. So I like to survey a lot of people. I'm coming up with some analysis around how things are looking internally, and what are some of the proven factors or proven things that people can do to both retain and develop their
Mhm.
employees, as well as on the other side of that equation, how employees can excel and move forward. So I spend a
Right.
lot of my time doing that.
And so that takes up how much of your day? I mean, do you have time to do anything for fun? Is there any type of work life flow going on in
Yes,
your day?
I like to. I spend at least an hour, I would say, physical fitness, like working out in the gym. We have a really nice. I'm in the Midwest, so we have a lot more space in the Midwest versus folks that are in New York or California, when you're on a very small plot of land.
Mhm.
But I have a nice fitness center at home with my wife, and I like to work out together, and then we spend time with the kids. My kids are in. They just started sports again, the winter sports cycle. So that'll be, I'm sure, consuming a ton of my evenings, which is fine. I like it. So yeah, that's what we're doing at home here.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I wonder if you could help for those folks that are working for themselves, and doing things like, I mean, do you consider yourself a coach,
Yeah,
or is
absolutely.
okay?
Yeah.
So as a coach, I tend to make all this time for my clients and forget about making time for myself. Do you have any best practices for keeping the work life flow going? Because I know it's a little hard, when you're running your own business, you want to stay forward focused, and you have a family, so that's another,
Mhm.
like, a whole nother job.
Yep.
But how do you keep the flow flowing?
Yep, for sure. It's something that honestly I struggle with sometimes. It's not a perfect system that I have. One recently, I was talking to somebody. You can create a lot of systems and frameworks, and they might work for a period of time, and then certain aspects of your life changes, and so you have to kind of adapt. But
Yes.
what has historically worked for me in the past is I'm big on time boxing. So I'll
Mhm.
set time aside on my calendar for specific activities, and I usually try to I categorize my meetings based on the amount of energy that I'll be drained or that I'll gain from this. Like today's discussion is I would categorize it as a blue meeting because it's an energy up. Like for me is it's good. But there might be some meetings on my calendar where it's an orange meeting where it's like it drains me from energy or it drains energy from me. Because I'm green red colorblind, so normally it would be like green and red. So I go to blues and oranges for that. So I try to manage my calendar so that I'm not always in an orange, or I don't have a series of sequential oranges. And granted, sometimes I can't control it, but I try to mix it up with a blue one in there. And then I always find if I enter prepared, then I have a way less anxiety, and I can know what done means during the day or during the week, so that come 6 or 7 p.m. On an evening, I know that I've accomplished my mission. I know that I've done what I set out to do today, which is a part of an overarching plan, which is a part of an overarching vision. Then I can be good. But if I find myself highly anxious or I'm feeling like I need to spend a lot more time, it's usually because I have a lack of clarity somewhere, and I try to get to the root of that.
Interesting, very interesting. I love that. I'm gonna totally go off script and find out how do you get to the clarity piece.
Yeah. So I have I like to do the Ikigai diagram for fulfillment. If you're familiar with that, I'm
familiar, but our listeners might not be. So
yeah. So it talks about things that you love, what you like to do, what you'd be spending your time on, and then what you're good at. And then that's from like sort of Japanese, I believe, is the origination or the originating culture behind it. But it's my favorite exercise to be able to kind of get down to what fulfillment means. And then that's a good place for me to understand what behaviors and what things I personally find fulfilling. And I couple that with my ambition. And my ambition, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. One recently that I've been doing a lot with myself and clients is a postcard from the future. You can write down, what am I doing in 2030? Who am I interacting with? Who is in my circle? Who's not in my circle? Who are, what are the things that I've accomplished? Where am I staying? Where am I traveling to? Those types of questions, you can kind of like conceptualize what it looks like for me in 5 years from now, which is a standard, like, where are you in 5 years or 10 years or whatever?
Right.
And knowing that ambition, I can create in order for me to have a house in Hawaii, then that means that I'm making X amount of money to be able to have a house in Hawaii. And in order for me to do that, I have these different income streams, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how I like to break it down. And that's usually, again, around this time of the year, towards the end of the year, is when I'll start to have those exercises, or I'll start just collectively think about what that's going to be.
And that sounds like a great tool. Thank you for sharing that. That's a great tool for our listeners and our audience to think about as the year is winding down.
Yep.
To think about that, and that really does get you clear on what's going on.
Yes. It helps me.
I think that's great. No, thank you for sharing that tool, because I think it's always I think people find it a mystery, career coaches, executive coaches, coaches in general. It's like, what do they do? How do they balance their lives? How do they keep it going? And there's no such thing as balance. That's why I like to use the word flow. But that tool is amazing. And it's something that you not only use for yourself, but you use for your clients as well. And so you're walking the talk. So
absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go back to the employee retention focus. So you've developed a powerful approach to helping leaders, improve their retention. From your perspective, what are the biggest mistakes that managers make that cause great employees to leave? And what can they do differently to help them stay and thrive?
Sure. So much, like,
get your pens and papers ready, leaders. Get it out.
So there's so much that you can learn. Like there are technical skill sets or things that frameworks and tools that you can use that are very easy to understand and easy to implement. So those are, I'm going to sort of pause on those for a second. I'll come back to them. But the biggest thing I think is, as cliche as it sounds, is you need to be a better listener than you were before as an individual contributor. And you need to also be more vocal about providing constructive and also positive feedback. So many people, and I'm not asking, or I'm not saying, oh my gosh, this was so great in every meeting, every call. It needs to kind of be authentic. Like you can't come off like you're just making things up. And there's a whole tangent that I won't go on around toxic positivity and all that other stuff and the really negative impacts that come with that. But I think the two things immediately you can do if you're a manager listening right now is, one, what have the people that report to you or your team, what have they been saying? And really think about it. Don't just hear it, but comprehend it. And two, when can you proactively plan to provide feedback in a constructive way? And that's not a mean thing. Constructive feedback to help people grow, as well as positive feedback. And provide positive feedback in public, constructive feedback privately. And that's, those are the two easiest things that you can do immediately if you're struggling as a manager. But there's a whole other host of other things that you can do technically that would make you a better manager. Day one that we can talk about as well.
I mean, we've got like 3 podcast episodes already bubbling in the background. So you mentioned the framework. What the framework is STEP, and it's all about making leadership simple and actionable. Can you break down what STEP stands for and how leaders can start applying it to create more fulfilled teams?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a pretty simple framework for people to follow. I don't think it necessarily follows STEP that much anymore. I'd have to go back and remember what the branding recognition is of it. So don't judge me on the fact that it might not be STEP, but there's a 3 sort of step process that we follow that helps leaders get into the groove of how to become better managers. The first one is, actually, we talk about flow a lot, and it's how you manage and disseminate work to your team, which is, a lot of times it's very challenging for leaders because they feel like they're always in constant fight or flight, or they're always fighting fires, or they're always doing something they feel like they might be stepping in more than they want to be stepping into their employees. Right. And it causes a lot of friction and tension and resentment. So the first thing we talk about is flow. And I come from a background of lean process optimization and Kanban or Kanban for those that know what it is. It's a way of managing work. It's a workflow management system. And we start there. It's a work visualizer and how you can take work from whomever you get your work from internally. If you're from marketing, maybe it's from the sales team or from the brand team or whatever. Or if you're an accountant or you're in accounting, you get that from the sales team. Whatever your work intake is through your process and the people that consume your work, we set up a step-by-step process so that you can optimize your flow. So that's the first thing, which is very technical. It's like, hey, this is how we're going to make you more effective at doing your job, full stop. Because I've found that in all of my sort of time working with managers and helping other people get promoted, there is an incredible correlation between people that are more productive versus people that take a long time to become perfect, which may be a counterintuitive message to hear, but productivity is usually valued more, even if it's sloppier or even if it has higher defects. So that's the one thing that we try to do is once you install this Kanban system or a flow system, you can measure everything, and when something can be measured, it can be optimized. So that's the step one, first thing.
Nice.
Yeah. The second aspect of it is your competency framework, which is all about the employee and the expectations that you have with your system and your team of people that report to you. And this one is particularly applicable to organizations or teams that are smaller or growing. If you're at a bigger organization, the chances are very likely that you already have a competency framework somewhere. And then we talk about how we can apply it to your specific niche or your specific subunit within your organization. But a competency framework takes the things that you value in your employees, the things that you prioritize, and defines them very explicitly, saying, for an entry-level person, I expect them to do X, Y, and Z against this behavior. I expect them to do this differently for this type of behavior. And it's very clear what the expectations are from most junior to the most senior role. And being able to have that and standing that up and establishing that is hugely impactful for a multitude of different reasons. One, it gets you in really good spots with your internal leadership team because you have actively taken the step forward to defining what behaviors you value. Two, it's very good for the people that are on your team so they can see where they need to be focusing on and how they need to develop, which was back 2016, 2015 timeframe. That was the missing piece to that engagement that we did that I talked about earlier of nobody knew what success looks like. If you go to an organization, like, how do I get promoted or how do I become successful internally? No one could answer that question clearly. And still today, people can't answer that question very clearly because they're missing something like a competency framework that's applicable to their specific domain. So get that established. There's a whole playbook that we can talk about, or that I could spend hours talking about how to run your team with a competency framework and flow. But I'll pause there. And the last piece is how you become a better servant leader, how you become, like, traditionally, if you're in the car, you're, in transit and you're thinking about leadership, most of the times people will visualize a triangle and themselves at the top of a triangle. But servant leadership, you invert the triangle, meaning you're at the bottom of it. How do you support the inverted pyramid or the inverted triangle? What are the things that you do to become the most effective servant leader for your team? As well as how you manage your position, because you are also somewhere in an org chart. You report somewhere to somebody. Right. So how do you become as effective as possible as a servant leader reporting up into a senior director, VP, or a CXO position? So those three things in parallel, you master those. Guarantee you're going to get promoted, because I've seen it 9 times out of 10. I guarantee you're going to be more fulfilled and have more time back to your family or back to whatever your passions are 9 times out of 10. And the only reason why I'm saying 9 times is because I don't want to be as brag to say 10 out of 10. Right. If you do those things, then I guarantee you're going to have some really impactful results.
That is gold. I am a huge proponent of servant leadership. I'm all about flow and understanding the competencies. I mean, it's like, this is just leadership gold. And so I'm taking notes for my own self so that I could incorporate the framework with the folks that I'm working with, because it's just really important. I think it's more of a holistic approach to understanding how your leadership works and making it work for you with versus against you. And so it really just shows insight and vision and action. And I think those are the things that, the people above you are looking at when you are trying to step up into these leadership roles. So yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm hoping you all are taking notes, because this is some good stuff. You might need to put this on like your favorites for this episode. There's a few more questions that I wanted to get through. There's a lot of myths out there about employee engagement, everything from people leave bad bosses to you can't teach fulfillment. What's one myth about leadership or retention that you wish you could eliminate for good?
Yeah, it's actually kind of related to what you were talking about before the question, is that there's no one style of leadership, and leadership is very personal. And a lot of times when like conventional leaders are big and strong and loud and at the top of a mountain and all of the other tropes that we've kind of become used to, which is not accurate. Leadership can take the form, or leadership is a very personal thing. It's how you define who you want to be to your team. And it's, there's authenticity, there's other words for it that are very aligned to it. And I think that's what I like to dispel with the new managers that I talk to the most, is that you don't have to become, the next crazy like leader. Like, you don't have to become some fabricated version of what leadership looks like. You can do leadership your own way, and you can define it your own way. And when you are more authentic and when you're more available and when you can listen and a lot of that stuff, retention becomes a lot less of a concern for you. Right. But there are like some tangibles retention, there's a study, and I can't remember exactly the source. I'll have to go back and look at it, but like people are 76% more likely to stay if they have a consistent one-on-one with their manager. And now you see like companies that like Airbnb and Nvidia, they did away with certain levels of one-on-ones, which is maybe you don't need it at an executive level. Maybe you don't need it there because everybody on the team is, at a different level in their career. But if you're at a middle management and below, or even senior middle management and below, I can't understand or fathom how you would be able to lead or be a part or contributing to a team without having some type of one-on-one dynamic with the people that you're reporting to. So that's a huge, and that goes back to the first thing I said is how well can you listen? Because people need time to talk to that. The open door policy is a myth that I would say I'm a big anti-proponent of open door policy because it puts all the responsibility on the employee. And you're not actively trying to solicit information. It puts all of the responsibility on them. If they're mad or pissed off or having a bad day, they then have to go and come to you, which as a leader, if that's, I think there's a better way to handle it. I think if you have a one-on-one, you can have a consistent communication stream and say, hey, what are we doing today? So that's
that's the open door. To me, I feel like I am a huge proponent of having one-on-ones. I think everything that I've written or talked about in any type of leadership capacity, I'm always like, you've got to have a one-on-one with your leader. And as leaders, we need to be the GPS. I think that the employee is in the driver's seat, they're behind the wheel, and the leader is the GPS system in the car. And it's up to us as leaders to kind of realize, hey, wait, that address that they gave me is a little different, like GPS is recalculate the route, but it also is incumbent on the employee to also share things have changed. But creating that welcoming environment, making sure they feel comfortable, so important. So thank you for busting those myths. This is my favorite question in the world. If you could share one leadership or career tip with your younger self, with the younger Nate, or with emerging leaders who want to build teams that stay and grow, what would that tip be?
So I think the tip is related to one of my favorite quotes, which is, I've adapted it since, but it's how I've adapted it is those who fear being conquered are sure defeat, which is an adaptation from Napoleon Bonaparte, who says men who fear being conquered are sure of defeat, but those is better in my opinion. And I think what that quote means to me is that if you are afraid of failing, then you've already lost. So if you can go after something and just try it and be okay with failure or be okay with the outcome as a negative one, that's way better than potentially being hesitant or potentially not taking the risk. So in a sense, I would say I'm pretty comfortable taking risks. As like an entrepreneur, you kind of have to be. But I would want my younger self, I would say, double down on it and go after it and be more comfortable with it, because it's you always, in my opinion, and a lot of times the risks, I've gotten burned many times. I've gotten non-positive incomes or outcomes in the moment. But 2 weeks later, a month later, 6 months later, 5 years later, I can always draw insight from it. I can always draw something from it. And it's way better to take the risk, to believe in yourself enough to say, I'm going, let's do it. And going after that. So for everybody that's younger, considering what it might be to go ask for the raise or go start your business or go in with somebody, obviously do your due diligence, but go after it. Like go in for a penny, in for a pound. Go all in.
And I don't know if he's read Show Your Ask, but that's what it's all about. You got to advocate for yourself, double down on yourself. That is a great leadership lesson, Nate.
Yeah.
Now, here is one more question that I didn't tell you that I was going to ask you.
Okay.
As we move into the new era of hybrid work and shifting employee expectations, what do you think that the future of retention looks like? How can organizations adapt to keep their people engaged and fulfilled long term?
Yep. I think, man, that's a loaded question.
No, it is. I was like, oh, sorry.
No, I have a lot of opinions about it, so I'll try to be as eloquent as possible. I think the reality of the situation is that we're now in the hybrid work environment, and in the way that our culture is shifting, especially in the States, is that a lot of responsibility for fulfillment and having a life catalyst is placed on where you live. Before 50 years ago, or I'm sorry, not where you live, is placed on where you work.
Yes.
50 years ago, a lot of that was shared. It was a shared responsibility with your community, with your church, with other area or other things that you spent your time on. But now, as culture is shifting a lot in the States, a lot of that responsibility is put onto the organization. And I think the organization can invest more in their people, not saying that, we believe in mental health and having one day for mental health, or we believe in diversity and equity and having a day or 2 days or whatever that is. Like, that's not really it. Like, you need to do a little bit more in terms of identifying what are the key drivers for your employees and finding ways to co-align fulfillment for them and success for the organization. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. A lot of different ways that you can make money or be a capitalist and still have a heart, or still have something that is not just inherently evil. There's a lot of ways that you can do that. And I think that's in order to retain top talent, in order to maintain the forward momentum, it lies somewhere in let's actually recognize the fact that we have knowledge workers. We don't have resources. We have folks that are coming in and dedicating a lot of their time. And also, full stop, people just deserve to be paid more. Everyone is paid. I just talked to a group in Pittsburgh a couple of weeks ago. And everyone laughed when I said that line. I said, everyone should go immediately. Like, you're not paid enough. You're underpaid. Because I know you are. I don't need to know anything about you, your level of seniority, how long you've been there, whatever your title is, whatever your discipline is. I know that you're underpaid, because that's just what it is. So I think pay, take it, increase it. Like, a lot of these companies are, plus billions in revenue, and an extra 10 to 40 grand on an annual salary across your 200 person employee base, not going to impact it. Not going to impact that billion. So
and think of it this way: when you retain the employees, you're spending less on the recruiting and the onboarding and all the other things all the costs of that. So it's just better. It's common sense business, but I'm not trying to insult anybody, but it's just common sense. Thank you so much for this conversation. It's so rich and relevant and timely. Thank you for helping us reframe retention as something that's built through connection and empathy and servant leadership. And for anyone who wants to learn more about Nate's work, you can visit thestepmanager.com, and he'll be sharing some more links with us, and we'll put them in the show notes. You'll find incredible resources for developing managers who know how to lead people so they stay. And if you're loving these conversations, y'all, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share Career View Mirror all over the place. Just share it with everybody. Share it with your boss. Share it with your CEO. Until next time, keep reflecting, keep rising, keep showing your ask. Thank you so much for listening to Career View Mirror. If you got value from this episode, please consider leaving a rating and a review for the show on Apple Podcasts, or head on over to Spotify and click 5 stars for our show. We also have a YouTube channel with video versions of our episodes, so subscribe over there for more content. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next episode.